We are completing 15 years of the annual Best Article and Best Photograph competition. We all know the media persons take their own risk to bring forth the stories which are sometimes forgotten or sometimes where it's difficult for all of us to reach. The humanitarian stories are the ones which we wanted to highlight, and thank you for all this support which you have been giving.
As a humanitarian organization, one of the things that the ICRC is trying to do is to bring humanitarian considerations into our daily decision making. Good journalism can help us with that a great deal. The journalists can highlight and bring to light various important humanitarian issues and also acknowledge the efforts of those who are working relentlessly on addressing them. The annual media awards are just about that.
I'm hoping, therefore, that our winners today will rededicate themselves to their profession and see the awards being given to them as a call for greater service.
These awards are a recognition, and it's a sort of a salute to all those young journalists, not just the award winners here and not just the people who sent in their entries. I think it's a sort of a recognition of the hard work that all these journalists in India put in.
So good afternoon. On behalf of the International Committee of the Red Cross, the New Delhi, and the Press Institute of India in Chennai, this is Sashi and I are extending to all of you a very warm welcome. I am particularly delighted to welcome Mr. Jan Miscock, who is the head of the ICRC regional delegation in New Delhi. Thank you very much for being here, Jan. We're also delighted to welcome the jury members for this year's awards, Usha Rai, Professor Mrinal Chatterjee, D. Krishnan, and Dr. Jaya Sridhar. Thank you all once again for being here with us and being a part of this program. As you saw in that video clip, this incidentally is the 15th year of the PII-ICRC awards. The last few years, the awards have gained in stature, not just in the number of entries that we've been receiving, but also in the quality of journalism. It is heartwarming to know from the entries that we've been receiving over the years that young journalists today are working hard to try and seek and find information, which, as we all know very well, is not very easy to gather. You can feel almost the passion they bring to the work they do and the passion that drives them to uncover stories that we might never have heard or we might never get to hear. There is also a sense, I feel, of journalists wanting to excel, wanting to make a mark. And the ICRC and the Press Institute of India are doing our little bit through these awards to try and motivate and encourage journalists to sustain the high standards of journalism, of good journalism, and raise the bar whenever required. I must, before I pass it on to Jan, I've been asked to mention that for those of you who are active on Twitter, please tweet with the hashtag ICRC PII Awards. Jan Miscock is the head of the regional delegation of the ICRC in Delhi. He started his career in the private sector, but switched to the humanitarian field in 2005, joining the International Red Cross and the Red Crescent movement 2 years later, working with the ICRC and the Australian Red Cross. He was posted to ICRC New Delhi in September last year. Jan has served in Egypt, Kyrgyzstan, the Republic of Guinea, the Democratic Republic of the Congo, Lebanon, and Thailand. And of course, he brings with him a wealth of experience. Over to you, Jan. We look forward to listen to your speech.
Thank you very much, Mr. Sashi, and thank you very much for being with us for yet another year on behalf of the Press Institute of India, our much reliable partner over the years. I would also like to thank the respective panelists that you mentioned for being with us today. Eminent guests, media representatives, our Red Cross colleagues, ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon to all of you. On behalf of the International Committee of the Red Cross, I am pleased to invite you, and especially the members of the media fraternity, to the 15th edition of the annual awards for Best Article and Photograph on a humanitarian subject. For over a decade and a half, through these awards, the Press Institute of India and the ICRC have been recognizing and honoring Indian media professionals who have painstakingly documented stories of humanitarian concern. This is a milestone, not only for our partnership, but also a momentous occasion in our endeavor to support media persons across the country for their invaluable contributions. These journalists and photographers have not only gone the extra mile to cover underreported issues, but have often put themselves in situations of risk to give voice to communities that need to be heard. Last year, around this time, some parts of the world were already reeling under what was considered the second wave of COVID. Today, we can say that almost every one of us has been touched by this pandemic in some way or the other. At a time when many were confined to their homes due to the restrictions brought in to control the epidemic, there were many others who ensured that those who need it receive the necessary care or essential supplies. Hence, it is only appropriate that the theme of this year's award is again superheroes battling at the front lines in the time of crisis. This year, like last year, the awards therefore hold special significance as we honor and pay our deepest regards to these thousands of healthcare personnel, Red Cross volunteers, first responders in various professions, and also individuals who continue to make extraordinary sacrifices in these unprecedented times. As the case globally, where the ICRC works closely with the national societies of Red Cross, Red Crescent. In India, the ICRC's primary partner, the Indian Red Cross Society, has been able to provide help to millions of people affected due to the pandemic through its vast network of volunteers across more than 500 districts of the country. From providing food and medicines to vulnerable groups, such as the elderly and persons with disabilities, to helping establish contact with families. They have supported national authorities in the pandemic response. Globally, during the COVID-19 crisis, we also sometimes witnessed unfortunate incidents where frontline workers and their families were subjected to stigma, discrimination, physical attacks, and violence. I would like to take this opportunity to reiterate that to effectively deal with the unfolding crisis and provide critical care and treatment to those in need, frontline workers, healthcare facilities, and personnel must carry out their duty without any threat to their personal safety and critical infrastructure. At a time when the world is collectively working to rein in the spread of the COVID-19 pandemic, struggling to vaccinate its populations, and simultaneously addressing several other crises, including armed conflicts, natural disasters, and climate risk, we thank the journalists present at Ground Zero for their unfailing commitment to putting a spotlight on the challenges confronted by humanity. Humanity, which cannot be seen only as a victim, but rather as a solution through the involvement of all of us, including you, the journalists. These awards are a small token of appreciation for your commitment to keeping people and their needs at the heart of your stories. Stories which often serve as important reminders of the extraordinary resilience and capacity of the communities. For nearly 160 years, the ICRC has been striving to fulfill its humanitarian mandate, remaining neutral, impartial, and independent in order to help those most in need. Besides situations of armed conflict, violence, and disasters, the world today is facing what has come to be known as an infodemic. And the year 2021 has more than ever underscored the role and responsibility of the media in creating awareness and disseminating reliable, life-saving information. This is also what makes the media an unquestionable stakeholder and partner in our humanitarian work. My heartiest congratulations once again to all the winners of the PII-ICRC Humanitarian Reporting Awards 2021, as well as those who participated in the competition. I am confident that the impact of your efforts and the reach of your words is a contribution to making situations more secure for those who brave it on the front lines every day in their commitments to saving lives. I also thank our longstanding partners, the Press Institute of India, for their unwavering support over the years. We look forward to sustaining this partnership and rewarding and acknowledging the excellent work done by the media persons. With that, I thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for your presence here today.
Thank you very much, Ian, for those warm words, especially for the journalists. Journalists, more often than not, are also unsung heroes. They are also superheroes, and we are doing our bit to recognize them. So that's wonderful. I'm also happy that you've understated the need to sustain our partnership that's been going on well over the last decade and more. Thank you very much. I know, we all know journalists are waiting to know who are the winners, so we won't keep them waiting very long, but certainly we must try and get the impressions of the jury members and their comments. So let me quickly introduce them to the journalists who are here and all those watching, starting with the senior most, Usha Rai. Usha is known, of course, for bringing in social issues, including women's issues, the environment, education, health, and rural development into mainstream media years ago when she worked for the Times of India, the Indian Express, and the Hindustan Times. She was one of the first journalists to bring out a page on development for the Indian Express in the early 1990s. Few might know that Usha joined the Press Institute of India in Delhi when the Press Institute was in Delhi, those years in 2001. And for a few years, she ran a newsletter in English and in Hindi. In English, it was called People and Hum Log in Hindi. This was supported by the UNFPA and the Ministry of Health. And thereafter, she's been an independent media consultant, still very active on the field. And a few years ago, she produced a manual on HIV and AIDS, looking at the impact of reporting on the subject on those infected and affected. Usha is a winner of the prestigious Chameli Devi Award for Outstanding Women Journalists. She's also won the FAO Science Writers Award for her article on forest rights and tribals, and the Media India Award for her series of articles on school education in New Delhi, which was published in the Times of India. So Usha, happy that you're here and a part of this program. We look forward to hearing from you a little later. Mrinal Chatterjee, I call him Dr. Chatterjee, is a journalist turned media academician. Started off as a lecturer in English in 1983, joined Sambad and Orissa Daily, or an Odia Daily. He moved from sub-editor and took charge of the North Orissa edition of the paper in 1996. Mrinal has written extensively on the environment and also worked for radio and television. In fact, he hosted a weekly science program on television for over 4 years. He joined IIMC in February 1999 and became professor and head of the Eastern India campus of IIMC, which is located in Dhenkanal in Orissa. This was in 2008. Incidentally, and this might interest the ICRC, Mrinal has attended a trainer's training program on conflict reporting conducted by the Thomson Foundation in Cardiff, in Belfast, and in London in 2016. He's published quite a few books on journalism and mass communication, but I think it's his book called The History of Journalism in Orissa that stands out. Doctor, welcome to the program. I'm happy that you're here. T. Krishnan, my friend and former colleague in Chennai, joined the Hindu in 1978, and for 12 years, he's covered almost all sport at the national and international level, including 2 Cricket World Cups, 2 Asia Games, and an Olympics. He's covered the Bhopal gas tragedy and was in Jaffna for an exclusive photo shoot of the former LTT chief during those years when we had the IPKF there. After a stint with the Associated Press, Krishnan rejoined the Hindu in 2005 as their photo or picture editor, and he's headed a team of more than 150 photographers and photo stringers across India. He helped the Hindu set up their photo archives, organizing and digitizing more than 1.5 million images. Krishnan teaches at the Asian College of Journalism, neighbors to the Press Institute of India. DK, welcome to the program. Look forward to hearing from you soon. Dr. Jaya Sridhar is a medical doctor by training. Jaya is a former special correspondent who covered health and medicine for Frontline, the magazine that is published by the Hindu Group. She's a technical advisor to Internews Network, an international media development organization. Jaya is the founder member of the Center for Security Analysis, where she works on issues relating to health security. She's won a gold medal for reporting on HIV for the Harvard AIDS Institute, part of the Harvard School of Public Health. Jaya, like Krishnan, teaches health journalism at the Asian College of Journalism. Jaya, welcome. I think you're in Chennai, or are you in Kodaikanal? Because that backdrop looks so very inviting. Thank you for being here. So let's get started. I'd like to first have impressions from the jury members, starting with you, Usha. Your impressions about the entries received this year, and you've been a jury member before. How was the experience, and what have you got to tell the journalists watching this program?
It was a wonderful experience. I have not seen such fabulous writing, and I was particularly happy there was no aspect of the health scene which was not covered. It was wonderful to go through the kind of dilemma that the doctors went through, the psychiatrists who were handling cases that were calling them constantly for advice on how to do with the tremendous losses that they were suffering. It was wonderful to see the kind of reporting from rural India. You know, it's really, people traveled out of their way to get these stories, and I'm amazed how they were able to do this despite the pandemic. Many of them were able to highlight things that were going wrong, and were able to bring about change, I would say, because of their reporting and constantly highlighting all that was going wrong. But there were lots of wonderful people that, you know, that one recalls through these stories, people who went out of the way to help people, to help in burials and cremations, young people with a lot of devotion. My only hope is that when the pandemic is over, we should not give up reporting on these issues. We should keep at the government till we have infrastructure in rural areas, till there is a regular health beat, not just the periodic ones that happen, but a continuous writing on health issues, so that the focus remains. You know, what happens is when something goes wrong, we all scramble and write about it. And then when it is not in our view, in the public gaze, it just goes into the background. I hope this does not happen now. Thank you.
That's a very pertinent point you've made, Usha. Professor Chatterjee, your views on the entries and your experience of having gone through them all.
Having worked as a field reporter myself, like Usha ji, I'm also amazed at the way journalists negotiated. There were 3 major challenges during this pandemic. One is of mobility. The second challenge was safety. And the third challenge was not much at the time of the pandemic was in full-blown state. Not much was known about this pandemic. And there were flood of what we call infodemic. I mean, all wrong kind of information, all misconceptions about this pandemic. And the journalists had to negotiate all these three challenges to come up with the stories. Like other juries, I was also amazed at the way the journalists, young journalists, I mean, we do not know many of them personally, but I'm amazed at the quality of work, both the reporters and the photographs. And yes, health should be a regular beat. Health journalism, health journalism, public health journalism to be specific, should be part of journalism's level across the country. It's too important an aspect to be left for no sporadic kind of reading. I really am happy to be associated with this for the first time, and I thank ICRC and Press Institute of India for that. It is an eye-opener for me. Thank you.
Thank you, Doctor. I think both Usha and you have, thrown the spotlight on the need for having the health beat. I think some of the leading newspapers do have it, but I think many do not. It's like the agriculture beat. I think the Hindu ones had it. I don't know whether they have it now. Maybe Krishnan can tell us a little bit about it. But certainly on aspects related to health, we need to look at things far more seriously. I hope editors and journalists who are listening or watching will convey the information to their editors and bosses and try and sort of convince them that this is a really serious issue. DK, over to you. What's your experience of having gone through the entries, and now you're looking at pictures, and you've seen, and we've all seen some stunning pictures that were submitted. Your views?
It was great to look at all the pictures from all over India on one platform, especially rural India. And most of the pictures, of course, were vying for the top prize, but we could shortlist only 3, but we shortlist what the thing. But then again, another aspect of this was how people coped with the pandemic, especially in the education sector, where rural areas where internet facilities were either non-existent or very slow or very difficult to get your internet connection. So these were highlighted by a lot of photographers in their own areas, especially in rural areas, and how people coped up and to accept the pandemic, to live with the pandemic. That was a very, very refreshing part of looking at the pictures instead of seeing pictures of dead bodies, burning bodies, and other things. This was the positive aspect of the pandemic which came through with the pictures.
Yeah, what about the risks they took? Because as a photographer, you need to be there at the scene, isn't it?
Yes, that is always there. The photographer is always, whether it is rain, cyclone, storm, anything, you got to be there on the spot. And that is part of a photographer's life, and that is what he commits himself to when he joins a newspaper. And he has to be on the field 24/7, whatever time of the day or night. When he gets a call, he's got to be there and he's got to be on the spot. There's no remote photographing for him. So that, I didn't lay stress on that because I think that is sort of accepted as a photographer has got to be on the spot, available when things happen.
Yeah, but of course, during the pandemic, it's a different ballgame altogether, isn't it? But even then, they've risked their lives.
Even yes, they did, and a lot of photographers did catch the thing, and they were hospitalized. Some lost their life. Yes, but it is part of what you have accepted to do when you joined a newspaper.
Right. So that's Krishnan for you, as professional as always. Jaya, coming to you, you've heard what Usha said, you've heard what the professor said, the need for a health beat. Your specialization has been on health in all these years. You still work with Internews. Of course, you can talk about this, but of course, you can give us your impressions about the entries, etc. But do tell us what you think about having the need for having a health beat for all newspapers and for all online publications.
Thank you so much, Shashi. It was great to hear Jan and all of the fellow jury members, as well as Surinder. It's always a pleasure to be part of the annual ICRC awards function. And mainly, I think the best part of this is having the opportunity to read some absolutely fine journalism commentary on some very, very key issues that have been unfolding over the last year. So this year, again, it was no different. It was an absolutely marvelous experience. And I can't say how pleased I am to see all of the jury members batting for the health beat. But I'd like to add on to that. And one of the things that these articles have really brought home to us repeatedly, I think in several ways, is how health seems to transcend several spheres of life, isn't it? So it's not just interviewing the doctors in the hospitals or the patients in their beds, but it actually went beyond that to look at issues related to governance on a large scale, issues related to politics, the way we managed the whole, the fallout of the COVID-19 pandemic, the oxygen shortage crisis, and earlier the reverse migration of people going back to their villages, to fleeing towns and not being able to do so. So I think humanitarian reporting in the context of health offers wonderful opportunities for all of us to apply different kinds of a lens to perceiving how people are affected by health in the midst of a context where there's no access to information, there's no access to help, there's no access to medicines, there's no access to water, and you lose your loved ones. So in that kind of a pressured atmosphere with so many challenges, to see these brilliant stories coming out that capture not only the local realities, but also what people are going through. I think that's what really made this year's entry stand out. That we saw stories about doctors not as doctors, but as human beings. We saw stories about people who were helping others, not just as good Samaritans, but I think there were the other quirks of their characters or the other aspects of their personalities that really put flesh and breathed life into these stories. So I think that kind of a rich texture came out in all of the reports this year. And I think that's what's really added value and gave great joy, even if you were reading about a terrible situation, or even if you were reading about a tragedy, one, if I may say so, could savor it because you were there, you were immersed, the journalists were able to put you there. So we saw some absolutely wonderful reporting. So of course, I'm in favor of a health beat everywhere. But again, I think health as health reporting is not a standalone siloed sort of a specialty. It needs to span several sectors because I think the health sector only deals with the disaster, with the outcome of the disaster. We just put the band-aids on the coffins, but the makings of the disaster are there outside the health sector. So I think I might as well just end this by saying, by voting for reporting on health between pandemics as well. And an important aspect of that is reporting on pandemic preparedness or disaster preparedness. So make your contacts with the people who are there on the front lines, whatever contacts journalists have picked up in reporting on the current COVID pandemic. These contacts need to be kept alive in preparation for the next pandemic or the next disaster. I think that kind of outreach to communities, people who are managing disaster on the front lines, those responders need to be in our little black books, and we need to keep in touch with them between disaster reporting so that we understand we are in their shoes and we are able to convey that empathy in our stories. So thank you again to the ICRC for this absolutely wonderful opportunity to learn from all of that brilliant reporting that we got exposed to. And it was also a really humbling experience to work with veteran journalists and learn from them as part of the jury process. So thanks once again, Shashi, Surinder, Mr. Jan, and all my fellow jury members, and most of all to the journalists and their brilliant entries. Thanks.
Yeah, we're not done yet, Jaya. So we have some questions for all of you from me. So yeah, I think you're echoing what Krishnan and the others have saying. I don't know about this new texture that you felt while going through the entries. Krishnan also mentioned about it, about pictures being slightly different. there's a little more positive touch to things. It's not just the bleak and the dismal and the dull, and the depressing kind of thing that we often get to read and see. So that's something, refreshing. Well, taking off from one of the points that you made, probably you can answer it, and I'd like to throw it to Usha as well and the professor. We often talk about primary sources being so very important, for journalists to, reach out to meet and, to depend on. And of course, primary sources, and we are not just talking about COVID here, but any sort of situation that is connected with health, includes hospitals, of course, doctors. You have the medical centers, and then also the patients, people who have been, have been treated successfully. Now, as far as COVID is concerned, we all know that there are not many doctors and researchers who specialize in COVID. Perhaps now there are a few more, but earlier in those 2 years, during the first wave and the second wave, we had very few. We often got to know from some of these leading doctors in Delhi that if your neighborhood doctor wouldn't really know much. And also for journalists, making sure that they pick the right experts to have the right knowledge of the virus, the conditions, etc., is so very important. You'd like to take that question first and then pass it on to Usha?
Sure. I think you flagged up a really important point, Shashi. I think the WHO is increasingly talking of the infodemic that's accompanied the COVID-19 pandemic. And there's been regular infodemic conferences around this issue, and a lot of scholarship being generated around how do we deal with this whole deluge of information that assaults us from our TV screens, from social media. Anyone with a digital voice makes news, and opinions, and that does wield its own kind of insidious influence. And we may not believe half the messages we forward to other people, but yet they have their own impact. I think distinguishing the right experts or the people who could be the authentic voices when you're reporting on vaccine science, for instance, or reporting on how COVID should be diagnosed or treated, or whether someone needs steroids if they still have a moderate COVID condition and so on. I think it's important for journalists to follow the literature around this. There's a whole lot of, just like in this digital age, there's a lot of exposure to misinformation. There's a lot of good information as well. And I think telling the two apart is something that comes with practice and comes with moving a lot with experts in the field who are recognized to be authentic voices of the field that they represent. So I think working with them and working side by side with researchers can better help us navigate that very treacherous terrain. So it's really important. I think a lot of homework, a lot of time, a lot of patience, but we have to invest all of that. Otherwise, we're going to feed the misinformation epidemic that's underway.
Yeah, of course. As you said rightly, a lot of patience, and of course, a lot of legwork still. Those are the fundamentals, that journalists are taught in journalism schools. So, Usha, do you agree with what Jaya is saying? And also, do you think, having gone through all those entries, that the researching aspect, journalists trying to research on their own, has also improved over the years? Because you've covered some of these subjects so many times, I'm sure, over the past 2 decades and more.
Yes. I think they were well-researched. They were definitely well-researched. And what I like also is the fact that a lot of them went into the interiors. That's what I was very heartened to see, that people actually traveled to villages and small towns where facilities are not normally available. And I think, as I said earlier, I think we need to keep our focus to ensure that health infrastructure is in place, that there is no hospital without oxygen, there's no hospital without ventilators, that the people at the grassroots level or at the primary health level are well informed. And it's not just about the COVID. They need to know about other ailments also. Tuberculosis, dengue, for example, is on a rise in a big way. There are new ailments coming all the time. So there has to be information that has to reach down to the villages, to the various blocks of the country, so that the information is shared and people then reach out to the right person. Normally what happens when you do travel in the villages is one normally ends up with some IAS officer or the district health officer. and we get the information from them. But I think it would also be good if the center keeps giving an update of what is happening to the villages, right down to the various blocks. And there is this movement up as to what is happening on the ground to the Ministry of Health. If we could actually say what has happened post-pandemic first year, how much of the promises that were made in terms of providing oxygen, in terms of providing ventilators, proper health facilities at the ground. If we could do 1 year after the pandemic, 2 years after the pandemic, if some newspapers, half a dozen newspapers, just take this on, just have one column on that, once a week, only once a week. How much have we followed up since then? It would be wonderful.
I wish I was an editor of a newspaper, Usha. We'll certainly given columns. But is anything being done in Delhi? Because you're in Delhi, and Delhi is where usually, you have these various media groups. Are they trying something on this front? Because Delhi was at the far end during the pandemic, especially the second wave, without oxygen and hospital beds, etc. Is anything happening there?
I really haven't been to the ground to see what is happening, but in terms of information, yes, there's plenty of information, and the people who are covering the health beat, they have access to all the people, and access not only to experts in Delhi, but all over the country because of internet facilities. They're well known, people talk to them on Zoom, and it's just easy to get information now, whether it's any kind of ailment, and especially all the new research being done abroad, so you can talk to the experts sitting in Vellore Hospital, in Ludhiana Hospital, and just get everything together. That is happening. I think the health reporters are doing their jobs.
Professor and DK, would you like to add anything?
Yes, Mr. Nayak. Information, initially when COVID started, it was a problem. Because I guess nobody was sure what to do in this situation. How do we tackle this situation? Nobody was very sure. Even there was confusion in the WHO scholarship also. But gradually, I think both at the international level and at the central level, even the state level, they picked up and they did a wonderful job in providing credible information which should be used and should be disseminated to downwards, were provided to the journalists. I can say, for example, in Odisha, even the state government had every day evening, kind of briefing, what has happened and how do we negotiate the situation and all. So far information is concerned, dissemination of credible information is concerned, dissemination of what's going on, the cutting edge research is concerned, the information was there. But the problem was, research shows that disinformation, misinformation travels faster than credible information. So people, thanks to internet and social media apps like WhatsApp and others, they were kind of flooded with misinformation. And that, I guess, did the major damage. So I guess that puts more responsibility on journalists as well as media outlets, that we must step up on our efforts to provide credible information. Along with that, there should be another track in which we need to train, I shouldn't use this word train, you need to tell the people that, look here, whenever you want some information, go to the credible sources, and these are the credible sources. Probably we need to do that also. Thank you.
Yeah, of course. You talked about misinformation, disinformation. Quick comments from Usha and Jaya. How does a journalist tackle this? Because as the professor says, thanks to social media, WhatsApp especially, Facebook, etc., you're just flooded with new, information, and most of it, whether based on studies or not, reveal that it is all, sort of bordering on or is, misinformation. How does a journalist tackle that?
Usha first.
I think you have to talk to the health experts in the ministry. They have a briefing every day, as Mr. Chatterjee was saying. They have a briefing, but then there is a one-on-one, or with the Indian Council of Medical Research, who are doing it from the research angle, or the other places. You can always check back with them: is this information correct or not correct? So the thing is, we should guard against disinformation. I just wanted to make one point which I had completely forgotten, and which is, I think, something which I should have raised earlier. I just find that post the pandemic, the number of young people who are dying suddenly of heart attack has gone up tremendously. I think this is something that the journalists, since there are, I hope, a lot of journalists listening in, will follow up. Just see the number of young people. Why have they died? Did they have COVID? Are they exercising too quickly after recovering? Why is this happening? So I just wanted to flag this before we go off in some other directions.
Yeah, of course. That's a very important point. I hope journalists who listen will try and follow up. Jaya, you wanted to say something?
Yes, on the misinformation and disinformation aspects, I think some of it happens inadvertently. People just forward messages that disinform and misinform people. Disinformation being a deliberate attempt to, twist the way things need to be understood. But on the other hand, there's something called the conspiracy theory, and conspiracy theorists who fan these notions that, Bill Gates is injecting chips into you that's going to track you for life, or that vaccines render you sterile, and it's a plot by some kind of a group of people who are trying to control you. And the genius of conspiracy theories, as someone said, is that they can't be disproved at all, right? So I think when we deal with misinformation and disinformation, it's not just a simple, linear, logical process of clarifying the facts. Like we do fact checking on a large scale. Fact checking has emerged as a kind of a journalism. It's a whole genre that's emerged over the last year, thanks to COVID, and sometimes, there's research to show that just clarifying the facts, just presenting the evidence as sound, solid science doesn't really make too much of a difference. It does. It appeals to you if you have trust in science. If you don't trust science, and if you don't trust the scientists, but you would rather go by a social influencer or the prevailing cultural notions of what is right and wrong, or if your religious beliefs influence your thinking, then you're more likely, I think the journalists need to also address those issues. I think we have to look at the emotional underpinnings of what we believe in and lead people through those conversations. So I think addressing things like vaccine hesitancies become a really key issue. And it's not going to end with this pandemic. We're going to see more pandemics and the need for greater global level adult vaccination programs. And I think we really need to cultivate a better understanding of science among the public. I think that's long overdue, and I think that should be the core of health journalism in a really key way. Help people understand the way science works, help them understand that it will walk slowly and it will take uncertain steps, and it doesn't have all the answers at the end of the day. It builds on itself. And that kind of a layering of understanding, that conversation needs to happen regularly in the media so that we develop patience with scientists and we understand why health guidance changes. And we're better able to appreciate how researchers, come up with their findings. So I think that trust in science, there's evidence that shows that if there's large-scale national trust in science, if there's consensual trust in science, there's greater possibility of vaccine uptake or greater, willingness of the public to follow prevention measures. But if that kind of trust is not there, if it's patchy or if it's distorted by several other special interest groups, then we have a problem on our hands. And that's something that simple, straightforward health journalism, which relies on fact and presenting the evidence, can't solve. So I think we need to bring more behavioral science commentary into the conversation to really understand this on a better scale. So that's my 2 cents on misinformation in the media, but I think it's a really important issue. Thanks for flagging that.
You've spoken well.
Ironically, the scientists are not always very sure of themselves, while the pseudoscientists are. I mean, that's the problem. So, I entirely agree with Dr. Jaya that yes, behavioral changes that also should be brought in some way into this public health domain. Yes.
Such as Professor, behavioral changes as in?
Like maybe we can put in our syllabus the elements of the belief. Why do people believe in something? What are the factors? And how do you change in their perception of certain things?
All right, yeah, of course, I got it.
These are the areas which should be brought into the syllabus of public health reporting as well.
So Jaya, if you have to be a good journalist, you have to believe in science.
Not just to be a good journalist, I think to be a good citizen across the board. And I think politicians need to have a better understanding of science. If they're good,
there you are.
I agree with you. I agree with you.
There you are. Okay,
on the heels of COP, and we're seeing what it's doing. We have climate change beating on our windows in Chennai, flowing down our streets, knocking down buildings and carrying away cattle. So yes, so someone once said, the disaster movies always begin with a politician discounting a scientist. So I think, yes, we need to forefront science in our lives much more than we have been doing. And I think journalists and the media are a great stage to
Dr.
do
Jaya,
that.
if we look at our constitution, it's our constitutional duty to have scientific temper. I mean, this very word is there in the constitution. It's our constitutional duty.
All right, Professor. Just moving on. DK, you have anything to say on this? Because I know about stories, yes, but pictures never lie. Yes. So this might not really. But I'll come up with a question for you in a bit. But before that, while we are speaking about primary sources, misinformation, the need to verify, etc., fact check. During COVID, there's been a flood of information. Almost every day, imperative for reporters, even editors, sub-editors at the desk and others to sift through all that information, distinguish between fact and fiction and all that. So how does one really help young journalists? I'm talking about younger journalists who just entered the profession to, sort of navigate, if I might call it, the muddy waters, and you have a new virus and make sure that, they get their facts right. Usha?
I think the young journalists of today are so much into internet and being able to look at the web and to connect with the right sources of information that pick up very quickly when they are on the job. I'm talking about these are journalists in the cities and other places. This information should also reach down to the villages. They should be able to access the correct information, and I think many of them are able to do it. It's not like in our time. It was very difficult for us to cross-check anything at the ground. We normally had to go to a government source to confirm, but it's not so now. You just pick up a phone, you talk to somebody, you look at the net, you look at 3-4 health. There are health pages. You look at the Lancet, you look at other health magazines, and you're able to find out what the truth is. And there's no doubt about it that the younger journalists are much more clued into looking at, at the net and the digital media much more than we did in our times.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think if you look at J schools, these days they offer formal fact checking. I think it runs across all the streams of journalism that's taught in the journalism schools. And there's also specialized training program, alt news methodologies, you have OSINT, you have, how do you verify doctored images, things like that. So I think it's the digital tools to sort of sift through misinformation and disinformation are very much there and being taught. And I think that's a great tool in the hands of young journalists. But there's also something called common sense. And that sort of thing that drives the journalist, which is to keep asking questions. Don't believe anything anyone tells you. And I think that kind of a healthy skepticism needs
Alert
to...
from Yahoo, password required.
I'm sorry. So that needs to keep guiding the journalist.
Fact checking. Just a minute. Just a minute, Doctor. I was just asking Jaya, do they teach fact checking and the process you mentioned at ACJ?
Of course they do. Yeah.
All right.
Plug for ACJ, yes.
All right. Yeah, of course, plug for ACJ. But yeah, I like the the part you mentioned about common sense. I mean, we all have it, but we hardly use it. I mean, many don't use it. at all, sad to say. Yeah, Professor, over to you. Sorry.
I was telling, taking a clue from Dr. Jaya, I was telling that all good media teaching institutes should conduct kind of workshops for field level journalists, young journalists, especially the J schools, who can cater to journalists from rural areas. They need to kind of organize workshops to train them into all these fact-checking tools. We do it at Indian Institute of Mass Communication regularly. We organize workshops. I guess this is one area where maybe more focus could be accorded, so that we can, all the J schools with their resources and all, they can move out and cater to rural level journalists, young rural level, community level journalists. This could be done.
All right. Thanks, Professor. Krishnan, there's a question for you, because this is to do with pictures. There's been fear while, while the COVID pandemic was raging, and of course, fear even to read the newspaper, even to look at news. A lot of people didn't even want to look at numbers. How many numbers today? How is it going to be tomorrow? And how many yesterday, etc. Those who've recovered, new cases. And, at a point, many people stopped looking at those numbers because it was quite frightening. That's the number part of it. But the other part is, the story part and the picture part. I'll come to the picture part first, so you can answer this. Using pictures carefully is so very important, for photographers, for the newspaper as such, people who are editing the pages or who are putting these things online, to basically avoid, frightening people and also, to avoid spreading the wrong message. Now, this certainly is a challenge, and it is also, tells us that we need to be sensitive. From your look at the pictures that we've received during this year's awards, and you were also there during last year's awards when we ran the same theme, what's your impression about how pictures are being treated by news publications? Are they frightening people, or are they being chosen well?
Okay, I'll give you an example from my own thing in the Hindu. We normally have a debate whenever we use these sensitive pictures. There's a debate in the evening when the editor-in-chief comes in, and we show the picture around to decide whether it could be used or not. In fact, the oldest person in the hall gives his opinion. The youngest person who has just joined in also gives his or her opinion. And generally there is this thing. But on occasions, for example, there was during the bomb blast in Bombay, the very bizarre bomb blast, we decided to use, although the pictures were gory, showed a lot of blood and flesh strewn all over, the editor-in-chief decided to use it because he wanted to educate the readers on the impact of what terrorism really is. So those are the exceptions which we take in publishing a sensitive picture. So in the case of the pandemic, the public will have to know the effect of the pandemic, how it is. So cases like this, yes, definitely these pictures can be used. But generally, then actually we avoid using pictures showing a lot of blood and all of that, unless you wanted to educate the reader on the effects of terrorism or the effects of this pandemic or whatever.
All right. So you're saying there, if you have a solid reason to use a picture to educate the reader, then of course you could use a certain picture. All right. So I'll move on to the others, but I'll just add, the story part of it. Now, when I say frightening pictures, there are also frightening words, if I might say, that are sometimes used by, by journalists or that appear in reports. Say, for example, the phrase killer virus and things like that. And the kind of reportage generally. How do we avoid spreading panic while we at the same time continue to, provide balanced coverage? Start with you, Usha. Now you can dwell on the picture aspect too.
Yeah, I think that's a very pertinent point you raised. Killer virus and words like that. It's very, very difficult. I know when we did HIV/AIDS reporting, we found a whole lot of words. And when we sat with the press council and we actually drew up words that should not be used, and then the press council actually issued guidelines. we found that the sense of depression was so deep among those who had HIV and AIDS that they were jumping off buildings and committing suicide because they thought it was so hopeless. So I know how important it is, the kind of words that they use. But when you are in the midst of a crisis, it's very difficult then to educate them. So I really don't know how, while we are reporting, but I think the news desk, the sub-editor, he has to be trained to reduce to make it less gory, not to make it a sense as though leave you hopeless. I know that a lot of the stories that we read made us feel that there is no future at all. That's the end of the world. They were like doomsday pictures, and I did feel at times, God, I don't want to open the paper and read any more of these stories. But some of them have to be told also but it's the use of the words, as you said. I can't think of other words. There must be a whole host of words that people are using, like the killer virus or things like that, which are not necessarily all true also, So how do we tone it? I can't think of an immediate solution right now, but definitely people need to look at the kind of usage of these kind of words and how we can use other phrases that will still, tell you the impact or the magnitude of the problem without it sounding so hopeless a situation.
Yeah, of course. Professor, the same question, but with a slightly different. Do you see this happening more in the in the vernacular media? Let's say in Oriya papers, for example, and I'll of course pass this on to Jaya also because there are Tamil newspapers here, but I'm not an expert in that area. But how does the vernacular papers fare when you're trying to be sensitive? But are they being sensitive enough, Ronald?
Yes, it's happening. And on a lighter note, probably viruses will hire a good lawyer and say that, look, all of us are not villains. Probably they have to do that. The other day, I read a book which says that without viruses, human beings, wouldn't have been possible for any living being to be on Earth. Don't posit them as villains, right? And increase the sale of sanitizers, for God's sake, which will take us towards another cancer act. So I think, yes. But I also agree with Usha ji. When the pandemic is raging at that time, and everybody is at a state, both the reporters and at the desk, the sub-editors. So, yes, there were use of those words and the way the entire thing was portrayed as if this is the end of the world. And that is why we need to train our sub-editors well, especially sub-editors, because they are the gatekeepers of what goes into the newspaper or the television, so that they can tone down a bit if it is completely going over. And this also gives added responsibility to J schools. We must also factor this when we are teaching our students editing.
Yeah,
this is one lesson for us.
Yeah, of course. But no, my point here is, we all know what, we learn in J schools, and I've not been to a J school, but, but even if you've been in a J school, the moment you're out in the field, all that you learn is forgotten. And then even if you want to, you can't, because you're forced to follow what the management in your office wants you to, right? So, okay, but of course, your point is well taken. Jaya, what about Tamil newspapers, and also do you see any solution to this?
It's interesting. This is a really interesting thing. Normally what happens is there are several civil society organizations, UN organizations, and health organizations that usually give you a list of terms to avoid when you're reporting about a particular medical condition. And some of that comes from communities who are affected or living with that particular condition. But what we often tend to sort of overlook is that they've been through an experience that has transformed them, and that has changed their outlook, and that's reflected in the language. So sometimes I think to myself, it's dreadfully unfair for a journalist who's not been exposed to that kind of a transformative experience to use a language that does not reflect his true feelings or understanding about something. So yes, do's and don'ts, if they blindly follow it, that's fine. But I think it's really important. And I just want to say a couple of things about the early years of HIV. And I had the privilege of working with Usha on contributing to the manual, that excellent manual which she brought out. We had journalists who had the means to go to some of the conferences. They would go to the conference saying prostitute and come back saying sex worker. They would go to a conference saying, queer and come back saying men who have sex with men. But what happened at that conference? That whole exposure to different perspectives from people with lived experiences. I mean, that's a kind of exposure that local language journalists also need, I think. Yes. So to me, journalists, words are our bread and butter, and we speak our world the way we see it. But the more we expose ourselves to the, stand in other people's shoes and get a better sense of empathy, I think that will bring the finesse and the sensitivity into the language. But I think by nature, journalists are very kind people. I think we like to understand what others are going through. So I think we just have to expose ourselves more and have the humility to learn and not disrespect what we can't understand.
Yes, of course, well put. And also the ability to implement what you have learned, or to try and put in practice what you've learned. That's what I meant when I told Professor about J School. The thing is, there are youngsters who want to do what they have learned. Serious people who want to do the job well. But one is, are they allowed to, and the other is how serious is he or her to really get along and go along with what they have learned. That is what I meant. Professor, you want to add something?
No,
all right.
I think, okay. Yes, we need to provide them that kind of exposure. And second thing is, probably the journalists, in their hurry to report and in their desire to portray the grim reality out there, probably use words without knowing what could be the ultimate impact of those words at that point of time. I mean, that is what these editors need to look at.
Yeah, of course. I think Mr. Oberoi is sending me signals that our time is up. But okay, let's end with one or two points that I just noted. We've all gone through the entries, and we've also seen reports in newspapers other than the entries. During the last couple of years, and the focus has been mainly on COVID and everything that's closely associated with it. But what about aspects like let's say the elderly? How are they staying healthy? For example, people with disabilities, and children dependent on the midday meals or the school lunches in several states. Then there you have single parents, for example, who are trying to manage children and work responsibilities. Schools conducting virtual classes. Do you think journalists are focusing on some of these aspects as well, or just focusing on the pandemic?
No.
These are also very important issues.
Mr. Nair, there were several stories on those aspects.
Right.
We are very happy with the entries that came, which touched upon all those aspects or even more. That is one very good feeling that we had, as juries. Excellent.
Usha, Jaya, and DK, your thoughts?
I agree. The coverage was tremendous. They talked about schools, they talked about single people, they talked about doctors, the dilemma of doctors, how to deal when you have 5 patients waiting for, and you have only 2 oxygen cylinders. Who do you give it to? Some of them had guidelines which came out of earlier countries which had already been through a pandemic. They use those kind of guidelines to take their own decisions. So some of these stories were fabulous. They were really, really good. And it was the coverage, that's what I said, my big sense was that the coverage was all encompassing. Every aspect they dealt with. The fact that you couldn't get signals in rural India for children to continue, the horror of children being orphaned, so many orphaned children. This is where I wish the the follow-ups would happen, where the government has promised that they will look after these. Do they look after them? Where are these children grown? How are they growing? This is what I would like people to do now.
All right. So we'll end on with this, one question that I have for all of you. And we're talking about journalists. We're looking at the award winners coming up, etc. Now, journalists, of course, need to go to the field, and they are at the risk of being infected. We've spoken about it before. In fact, the Committee to Protect Journalists had issued, some sort of a statement or an advisory for journalists who are covering the pandemic, which included pre-assignment preparations and, tips, for avoiding infection in affected areas, travel planning, etc. How strictly are news publishing houses following these protocols? Any thoughts? Or are journalists at their own, are left to fend for themselves?
I would say journalists are by and large fending for themselves. They do get some support from the from the newspaper, the organization, but I think basically the journalist has to know how to look after himself on the field. Keep away from distance, wear his mask, sanitize himself. Do as many interviews as he can on the phone or whatever it is. That is there. That's my feeling.
All right, Mrinal?
In fact, Indian Institute of Mass Communication, Dinkinal campus, in association with Press Club of Kolkata, we created kind of an SOP, standard operating procedure, for field level journalists. So what exactly to do and what not to do, what to avoid. And we translated this into 5-6 languages and distributed. But having said that, rural journalists probably they were lack of initial period, there were lack of awareness, there were lack of knowledge, and also a spirit of adventure probably. That I could say with responsibility, because I had contact with rural level journalists now. So there was a feeling of adventure, that these are the stories I can do, without knowing that when they can also be affected. So that was also there, which needed to be. I mean, that triggered us to come up with this SOP, and which probably to some extent helped. Yes.
Anyone else has anything to add?
Although most newspapers allow the photographers and journalists to work from home, but to get the stories and pictures, they had to go to the spot where they had to take care of themselves. As you just said, they had to take care of themselves.
Shashi, I think I just like to pay a silent homage to all the journalists that we've lost over the last couple of years, reporting from the front lines of a pandemic where the science was still evolving and we didn't really know what the risks were. And even after knowing what the risks were, we still saw crowds milling around. When the Sushant Singh episode happened, and subsequently during the election coverage in West Bengal and in Kerala, in Tamil Nadu, there were no masks. Neither were the political leaders that were campaigning wearing masks, nor were the workers or the election, the election apparatus. I mean, we lost teachers who were doing election duty. So I think it's not just the journalists, but we've lost several frontline responders across the board. And I'm thinking how to make that reparation. I mean, what should we be doing better as a society next time? I think there's got to be some kind of protection, some kind of insurance offered to the journalists who are risking their lives, trying to get us those great stories from the field. That's one thing. The second thing that I'd really like to flag up is the pandemic has affected the mental health of journalists around the world in ways that we can't even imagine. I mean, for one thing, this is a long drawn out crisis. We've been reporting on deaths, illness, and loss of, sort of emotional. It's been an emotional journey as well for several journalists who've lost their own family members. So I think this kind of a protracted stressor on you when you're working from the field and continuing to get your stories, that's something that I think every media house should have some kind of a recourse. What do you do? How do you help those journalists? Is there a way to connect them, to refer them to proper professional help? That's the other thing that's really key. And the last thing I'd like to draw attention to is that some media houses in the West are mandating vaccination. if you're going to be part of the news team, if you're going to be sitting with us in the newsroom or out there in the field reporting on something, you need to have your shots. You need to have that booster so that you're not a risk, while you don't fall sick, you don't become the story, and you also don't infect your co-workers. And we've seen a couple of high-profile journalists actually resigning because they didn't want that vaccination. They refused to be sort of compelled to take the vaccine, and that's not setting a really good example. However, there's always this little space of individual rights, but how does that sort of clash with greater public good is a question and a great story idea for follow-up. Thanks.
You've summed it up also well, Jaya. I think some of the points you made are very pertinent, and my question was really directed to get such answers. So I think media houses and editors, have to be told this. I don't know how we can do it, but perhaps we could, try and spread this message a little more wider. I think Mr. Oberoi is getting a little restless. Sorry, Mr. Oberoi, for taking a few more minutes of your time. I'm done. Thank you so much, jury members. I think we had a lovely conversation. It might have gone on for a little longer, but I think what we are looking at is the award ceremony. And over to Mr. Surendra Oberoi of the ICRC.
Thank you, Shashi, and good evening, everyone. The discussion is really interesting, and I wish we could have continued, but I know most of the journalists, the award winners, are just waiting for the announcement. There is a little of enthusiasm among most of the participants who are there and waiting and asking who is the winner. Having said that, I just want to add what most of the jury members were discussing about it, that the basic thing which is important for all of us as far as media persons are concerned, and the courses which we have been running as far as ICRC is concerned, called as ethics of reporting at a time of emergency. And in that, what is being mentioned about the vocabulary which is to be used, your own safety first is also important. And hopefully, in partnership with the Press Institute of India, we might try to conduct a couple of those courses in future as the things move on. And thank you once again. And now we'll directly begin the virtual prize distribution, starting with the awards of the best article on a humanitarian subject, followed by the announcement of the best photography category. But before that, I just want to share once again the slide which is already on the screens here. As we proceed, you will see on your screens the link and QR code containing all the information about our awardees and their work. All the articles which our worthy jury members were mentioning about are very much here. So please feel free to scan the QR or click the link which is there, and you will find all the materials which was with the jury members who have been judging the articles. And of course, there are some lovely articles to read and a lot to learn, as we all in this pandemic are in a learning process. So that is there. Even though if some of you after the event want to have these links, please feel free to contact the organizers, PII or us, ICRC, we are at your disposal. So let me directly now go to the winning articles, as well as in the best article category as we go. We received around, I think, 100 articles. A lot of them covered on the ongoing COVID, but they were also covering many of the other issues also, including the climate risk, as well as some fatal diseases. So I'll go in the reverse order. So let me announce, first of all, the third prize. The third prize goes to Tabassum Barnagarwala, sorry for the mispronunciation. Tabassum Barnagarwala. She's a journalist from the Indian Express for her article, and I quote, "As September COVID-19 surges, sweep rural Maharashtra, hunt for bats were there." Now, Tabassum covers public health and women and child development issues. She worked with the Indian Express for 8 years before joining Scroll in August this year. She was a year-long fellow with the International Center for Journalists to write on the early childhood development. She has won several awards also, which includes Reach Lily Award for Tuberculosis Reporting, Scarf Media Award, and the Ramnath Goenka Award. She was also finalist in several of other awards. Congratulations, Tabassum. You have won 40,000 rupees cash award plus citation certificate, which is being signed by both these organizations as well as a trophy. How we wish that you all were in front of us and we could have given these trophies by hand to you. And I would like Tabassum, if possible, to speak a few words. And all these panelists, as well as the chief guests, are joining with me in giving this award to you and to the other colleagues. Tabassum, the mic is yours. Please feel free to speak.
Thank you so much for recognizing my himself for this award. As the panelists discussed, COVID-19 reporting has been very challenging for a lot of us reporters because the main struggle was how to go on field report without catching the infection. I think the past 1 year has been a really tough period for all the journalists to cover COVID-19, and recognition like this really encourages us to work harder. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Tabassum, and please join me in appreciating and giving a clap to Tabassum, and looking forward to seeing. So in the article category again, the second prize goes to Shreya Mohun. She's the assistant editor, The Hindu Business Line, and for her article, and I quote, COVID-19 Warriors in Need of Healing Touch. Shreya is an independent journalist who has been a feature writer for over 12 years. And during the time, she has worked with institutions such as the Helga, Hindu Business Line, as well as some other newspapers called as Carvan, Open Max. Articles have published a lot in many of these newspapers as well as publications. And she has also won several awards, and she was also a fellow at the National Foundation for India. Congratulations, Shreya, and you win 70,000 rupees, a citation certificate, as well as a trophy. Shreya, I hope you are here with us. And can I ask you to speak few words about how your story was, what made you to motivate about the particular story and the challenges which you have been facing? Over to you.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Mr. Oberoi. Thank you, the Press Institute of India, to ICRC for the recognition. This means a lot at a time like this. I'd like to dedicate my award to all the doctors, nurses, and medical staff who worked tirelessly and silently through the pandemic, saving lives at the cost of their own mental and physical well-being, which is what my story explored. In May this year, when India was going through a brutal second wave, there were local news reports coming in of doctors and medical staff who were really buckling under the pressure. So I decided to dig into the human cost of what this medical care meant. I spoke to doctors, nurses, paramedics across, rural and urban settings, government hospitals, private facilities, and they all had the same story to tell of guilt, helplessness, frustration of being crippled by the lack of resources such as oxygen supply and hospital beds, and often having to turn away patients knowing very well that one more refusal could kill them. So, several of the medical staff I spoke to didn't even have regularized salaries. They couldn't be sure of securing a bed in the event that they themselves were to be infected. If the survival needs of our own healthcare workers aren't a priority, then how can we expect them to step up during a crisis? And that's what my story really asked. I want to specially thank the Hindu Business Line and Bishakha Desarkar, who was my editor at BL Link while I was there, for giving me the room to dig deep, for believing in the power of long-form journalism. I hope this story goes some distance to point to the loopholes we need to fix, to safeguard the lives of our COVID superheroes, even as the pandemic shape shifts in front of our eyes. So thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you, Shreya. And once again, congratulations from all of us. Again, how we wish that we would be physically present and you would have been receiving this award. But congratulations, as I said, you are winning 70,000 rupees and you will be soon getting them in your account.
Thank you.
And stay safe, and looking forward to see you one of these days.
Definitely.
So, ladies and gentlemen, now put your hands together. The first prize in the best article category goes to Anna Isaac. She's the news editor of the News Minute for her article, and I quote, "Who gets to live? COVID-19 is causing moral distress among Indian doctors." We saw how most of the journalists were talking about that, how they were learning about these issues. And you literally find in this particular article about the role of the doctors, that how they were fighting not only a single war within themselves, but also along with the patients with whom they were dealing in. So Anna Isaac, congratulations. And she is a journalist with over a decade of experience in television and digital news reporting and editing. Her stories have covered an extensive range of important subjects, including politics, natural disasters like floods and cyclones. And like many of our peers, she has been literally reaching and looking into that what is right and what is wrong while covering the things. Anna, congratulations, you win 100,000 rupees, which is 1 lakh rupee, as well as a citation and a trophy and some reading materials which you will get. Over to you, Anna. Please say a few words about your motivation of the story.
Thank you so much, firstly to Press Institute of India and to ICRC. I mean, this story was very hard for me, but I mean, I can't even imagine what the doctors during the second wave were going through. I spoke to a range of doctors from both small hospitals as well as, government hospitals in Chennai and most of the South Indian metro cities, as well as in small towns. And what they were dealing with at that point was essentially, an ethical and moral dilemma on who to save, because we were facing such acute shortage in, life-saving resources, like whether it was oxygen or even a bed. So I thought that at that point, I did speak to, the motivation to do the story was, I got to know of a doctor here in Chennai who was really struggling to sort of make this decision. And it was not a single event, right? It was happening at every point, in every hour, or in every day. So I thought that it was important to put their struggle into focus, because it's very easy to blame the government and to blame people for COVID, but it's also important to look at what the other side is facing, right? It's very important to say what hospitals are going through, especially nurses and the frontline workers. So I just also want to thank my editor-in-chief Danya Rajendran and the News Minute for allowing me to take some time to do the story, and for putting it out there as well. Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, congratulations, and please congratulate your editors also on our behalf. And we are looking forward to many, many more stories from your platform. And once you are in Delhi, please feel free to catch up with us. Thank you once again, and congratulations. Ladies and gentlemen, and all the listeners, this year we have a special mention prize, not only to 1 or 2 persons, but to 7 of the best articles. Even those who could not reach to the first, second, third positions, but the jury members decided that the way they have been working on the front line, taking their own risks, so they finally decided this year to give 7 special mention awards. And I quickly read their names, and then I'll ask them one by one to speak for a minute or so. And they are Shifali Bhatt, Rakhi Ghosh, Arvind Shukla, Neetu Singh, Jigyasa Mishra, Jodi Yadav, Farzana Nisar. So let me ask Shifali, if she's present here, Shifali Bhatt of the Economic Times, for her article, "The Air Your Therapist Broke Down." Shifali, over to you, please.
Thank you so much. I'd really like to thank all the 30 plus mental health professionals that took the time to speak to me during the second wave, and it wasn't easy for them to share the kind of stories that they shared. Some of them very disturbing, some of them very heartbreaking, and some of them I've still not been able to sort of get over. But I hope the article was able to sort of put some sort of a spotlight on what they have been going throughout this pandemic, and treat them with the kind of empathy that they deserve as well. because while they were not really out there on the front line, they were dealing with the aftermath of all the deaths. And thank you so much for this honor.
Yeah, thank you, Shefali, for being with us, and congratulations once again. You will soon receive the citation certificate, a trophy, and some reading materials from us. May I ask Rakhi Ghosh, the freelance journalist, for our article Unsung Heroes, for the pioneer which he had written about. Rakhi Ghosh, dice is yours, please. Rakhi, are you with us? I think she's not there, but if she joins us later, we might catch up with her. The next winner in the same category is Arvind Shukla, freelance journalist, for his article COVID-19 Lockdown in Remote Villages. And the story appeared in the Gaon Connection. Arvind Shukla, the dice is yours, please. Can we request you to speak for a minute or so, please?
बहुत शुक्रिया आपका सर, संस्थान का, जिन्होंने हमें ये इस लायक समझा और हमारी स्टोरी को पहचान दी। सर, मैं गांव कनेक्शन के साथ एसोसिएट हूं, जो कि ग्रामीण भारत का मीडिया हाउस है और हम उसके करते हैं। मैं यहाँ पे एज ए एसोसिएट एडिटर हूँ। जिस स्टोरी का हमने आपको भेजा, जिसकी आपने सराहना की, वो स्टोरी कुछ इस तरह से कि जब कोविड लॉकडाउन हुआ तो ज़्यादातर जो मीडिया थी, सेंटर फॉर अटेंशन जो था वो था कि शहर से आती हुई भीड़, लेकिन उस बीच गांव में क्या हो रहा था, किस तरह के हालात वहां पे थे। और हम लोग तो बहुत सारे पत्रकार थे जो उस समय ग्रामीण क्षेत्रों में काम कर रहे थे, लेकिन जब डीप इलाके थे, जो दूरस्थ थे, सुदूर के इलाके थे, वहां के जो हालात थे वो काफी बदतर हो चुके थे। और हमने अपनी स्टोरी में वही दिखाने की कोशिश की। और मुझे लगता था कि वो स्टोरी, और उसके बाद बहुत सारे पत्रकार जो हैं, बहुत सारे मीडिया हाउस गांव की तरफ बढ़े, जिन्होंने एक दशा दिखाई कि जो हाँ बड़ी आबादी रहती है वो किस हाल में है, किस तरह से जी रही है, और उनके ऊपर सामाजिक, आर्थिक, उनका मानसिक जो है किस तरह से वो झेल रहे हैं। तो बस मेरा वही था। और मैं आभारी हूँ आपका और उस संस्थान का, अपने गांव कनेक्शन का, हमारे फाउंडर नीलेश सर का, जिन्होंने हम लोगों को इस तरह के मौके देते हैं कि हम एक लॉन्ग फॉर्म जर्नलिज्म कर पाएं, लंबी दूरी कर पाएं और कई दिन फील्ड में रह पाएं। हमारी कोशिश रहेगी कि ऐसे ही खबरें आपके लिए करते रहें, लोग बताते रहें।
अरविंद जी, बहुत बहुत शुक्रिया आपका। वाकई आपकी स्टोरी, जिसे हम कहते हैं कि दूसरे एंड से थी, और उस चीज ने कई लोगों को बढ़ावा दिया कि वो जाएं और पहुंचे उस मोड़ पे जहां पे वो स्टोरी कर सकें। बहुत बहुत धन्यवाद एंड कांग्रेचुलेशंस वंस अगेन। The next winner is Neetu Singh. She's again from the Gaon Connection, and the story was about the prenatal checkups have taken a hit during the lockdown. Neetu, the dice is yours, please.
बहुत शुक्रिया सर, मुझे सम्मानित करने के लिए। मैं सभी जूरी मेंबर्स को, ICRC को बहुत धन्यवाद देती हूँ। हमारी जो स्टोरी थी ये गर्भवती महिलाओं और नवजात बच्चों पे थी, छोटे बच्चों पे थी, उनके टीकाकरण पे थी। कि जब हम कोविड का पहली लहर आई तो उस समय पूरा परेशान, समझ में आता क्या किया जाए। खासकर ग्रामीण भारत में रहने वाली गर्भवती महिलाओं और उनके बच्चों का जो टीकाकरण है, जो पूरे 3-4 महीने, हम कह सकते हैं पूरा 1-1.5 साल प्रभावित रहा। स्टार्टिंग के मंथ में जब सब कुछ अचानक से हुआ तो पता नहीं चल पा रहा था, लोग समझ नहीं पा रहे थे कि उन्हें क्या करना है, और गर्भवती महिलाओं की जो जांचें थी वो पूरी तरह से रोक दी गई थी। तो हमारी स्टोरी यही थी कि हमने 5-6 राज्यों में बात करके, ग्रामीण क्षेत्रों में बात करके ये पता करने की कोशिश की थी कि वहाँ का जो प्राइमरी हेल्थ सिस्टम है, जो सामुदायिक केंद्र है, जो उप सामुदायिक केंद्र है, उनकी क्या स्थिति है, किस तरह से मरीजों को, किस तरह से गर्भवती महिलाओं और बच्चों को इलाज दिया जा रहा है, और अगर इनको इलाज नहीं मिल पा रहा है तो आने वाले समय में इसके क्या दुष्परिणाम देखने को मिल सकते हैं। बेसिकली ये स्टोरी इसकी थी। बहुत शुक्रिया सर मुझे सम्मानित करने के लिए।
शुक्रिया नीतू, आपकी स्टोरी ने वाकई ही कई दरवाजे खोले हैं, और हम आशा रखते हैं कि आगे भी आपकी ऐसी स्टोरीज चलती रहेंगी। लेकिन अपना ख्याल जरूर रखिएगा, द सिक्योरिटी और अपनी सेफ्टी सबसे पहले होनी चाहिए। कांग्रेचुलेशन वंस अगेन नीतू, और सब गांव कनेक्शन के जितने भी रूरल रिपोर्टर्स हैं, हम लोग पढ़ते रहते हैं, देखते रहते हैं कितनी दूर दूर कोनों में वो जाते रहते हैं। हमारी तरफ से बहुत बहुत मुबारक दीजिएगा उन सबको।
थैंक यू।
The next winner again in the same category of special mention prize is Jigasa Mishra, freelance journalist for the article, "Nothing Can Be Done, Duty Has to Be Done." And the report appeared in the People's Archives of Rural India. May I ask Jigasa Mishra to please speak a few words and congratulations to you also.
Thank you so much. It's a pleasure to be here again this year after bagging one position last year. This has happened primarily because of PARI, People's Archives of Rural India, because of Sainath, my editor and a very, very special mentor. And I'm pretty sure it could not have happened if I was not associated with PARI, for the motivation Sainath gives to us, to all the journalists and people associated. And this special story was very disheartening to me. At the same time, it gave me a lot of courage to keep going. Disheartening because I met people who had lost their family members, teachers, another staff members of the school who went to the duties of panchayat poll elections, even if they did not want to. Some of them even had tested positive before going, but they were still sent there. So I really thank Sainath to give me this opportunity to travel and meet such families and edit my story very thoroughly to make it this good readable, and to Binny for editing the photos, and to entire team of PARI, and my family, my father, who even took me to some places to meet the families because there were no public transports, and all my family members in PARI again. Thank you so much, PII.
No, congratulations, Jigasa, and this is exactly called as that you look for the means and the movement, even if you have to use your family. But of course, stay safe, and this is for the second year running. We could not bring you here personally here, and who knows, maybe next year we are all together.
Yeah, looking forward. Thank you.
Thank you once again. And our next winner in the same category is Jodi Yadav from the print for her article, Day in the Life of a Doctor in Rural Bihar. And last person in this category is Farzana Nisar, freelance journalist for her article, COVID Combatants for Kashmir Life. She has been reporting from Kashmir, Srinagar. Farzana, could you please speak a few words if you are here with us? Welcome.
Yes, thank you so much, PII and ICRC, for recognizing the efforts. This is my first ever recognition in the field of journalism, and this indeed is a great feeling. We're talking about the story. It's about the Kashmiri doctors and other health professionals who contracted the infection, fought it, and recovered, while few lost their precious lives in the pandemic. So through the story, I plan to bring out the emotional stories, the stories of pain, loss, hope, and stigma from the warrior side. I remember talking to a female doctor who is a single mother and lost both her parents to the virus, and how she was blamed for killing her parents because she was held responsible for bringing the virus to the home. I remember talking to the orphaned teenage daughter of a reputed doctor who also lost his life to the virus, and how she was battling depression since then. The story has many other tales of struggles of these superheroes. It took me good 2 weeks to report this story because it was a time when doctors were the busiest people. So yes, it would not have been possible, without the doctors and their families who spoke to me and poured their heart out. I would especially like to thank my editor at Kashmir Life, who decided to put the story on the cover page. Last but not least, I would like to express my heartfelt appreciation to all the journalists in Kashmir who cross unimaginable barriers physically as well as virtually to tell the stories to the world. Presently, I am 30 kilometers away from my home at a relative's house because internet was suspended yesterday in my hometown in South Kashmir. This is one of the many things that we face on daily basis. So this goes to all of these journalists. Thank you once again. Thank you. Thank you so much.
Yeah. Thank you, Farzana, and stay safe. And thank you. Congratulations once again. Please convey our best wishes and congratulations to your editor as well as your other colleagues in the magazine and in your newspaper, Kashmir Life. With this, we end with this category, and our next set of awards in the best photographic category are, so I again will go with the reverse order. The third prize goes to Jaipal Singh, Chief News Photographer of the Indian Express, for his picture, Climbing Trees to Access Homework, and Online Education in a Remote Village in Haryana. Jaipal Singh, as you can see the picture, is the Chief News Photographer with the Indian Express. Earlier, he worked for the PTS department of the Express. And his pictures have been published widely in many of the newspapers. The Indian Express newspapers, he joined around in 2000 as in the editorial department, and he was also awarded the Chandigarh Press Club Best News Photographer in 2004. Over to you, Jaipal. If you can speak a few words and the challenges you have been facing around, and congratulations from all of us. Looks like Jaipal is not with us, but we'll try to contact him. He has won 40,000 rupees as well as a citation. Oh, he's here. Jaipal, we are looking forward. Can I have your word from you, please?
पहले तो बहुत बहुत धन्यवाद जूरी को जिन्होंने मेरे काम को सराहा, उनका मैं बहुत धन्यवाद करता हूँ। तो इस फोटो के बारे में जैसे मुझे पता चला तो मैंने सोचा कि इंटरेस्टिंग टॉपिक है कि इंटरनेट प्रॉब्लम की वजह से गांव वाले बहुत प्रॉब्लम फेस कर रहे हैं। स्कूल जो ऑनलाइन चल रहे थे, मैंने सोचा कि वहाँ जाया जाए। एडिटर से परमिशन लेके हम लोग गए तो वहाँ रोड कनेक्टिविटी भी नहीं थी। वहाँ पे 2 किलोमीटर हम नीचे उतरे जंगलों के रास्ते शॉर्टकट के लिए। तो वहाँ बड़ी वो सीन देख के मुझे देखा कि कितनी मुश्किल का सामना लोग कर रहे हैं। तो ऐसे हिंदुस्तान में कई जगह ऐसी प्रॉब्लम थी। बाकी पिक्चर तो कोविड में कई छपी, लेकिन मुझे लगा कि यही पिक्चर मैं भेजूं कंपटीशन के लिए, और आपने मेरे काम को सराहा। मैं आपका लिए बहुत बहुत धन्यवाद देता हूँ। धन्यवाद।
आपको बहुत बहुत मुबारक। आपने 40,000 रुपए, एक साइटेशन और एक ट्रॉफी और कुछ मटेरियल आपको बाय पोस्ट पहुंच जाएगा। और जैसा कहते हैं आप कि पानी, बिजली, सड़क और अब इंटरनेट भी मस्त हो गया है हर आदमी के लिए। तो we really appreciate the stories which you have come up, especially all our jury members. So second prize goes to Shashank Parade, if I pronounced the second name well. He's a photojournalist with Press Trust of India for his picture COVID-19. Positive cases crossed 500 marks in Maharashtra, published in Deccan Herald. Shashank is a senior photojournalist working with India's leading news agency, Press Trust of India, at the Mumbai Bureau. He heads a team of photographers at the office, and he has traveled extensively to the rural Maharashtra, Goa, Gujarat, and covered some exclusive stories, especially of the assignments which were given to him of the 26/11 attacks, Mumbai blast in 2010, and the visits of some of the high-profile persons like US President Barack Obama in Mumbai. Shashank, over to you. We would love to hear your story. And congratulations once again. You win 70,000 rupees, a citation, as well as a trophy and some reading material. Shashank, over to you, please.
Yeah. Thank you very much. I would like to thank the jury members and the organizers. It was very difficult during the COVID time shooting these pictures. We had to, go out when there was the lockdown. No one was on the roads. We were shooting. So I would like to thank again the jury for giving me this award. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Shashank. I'm looking forward once you travel to Delhi, and congratulations once again on behalf of everyone who is present here.
Thank you.
So again, my friends and colleagues, as well as all the participants, let's join hands. And I announce the first prize winner of the photographic section is none else than Deepak Joshi, a senior photojournalist who is a product of JJ School of Art. Now, Deepak is in this profession since the last 20 years. He has been associated with leading newspaper publications such as Times of India, Maharashtra Times, Sakal, Times, The Telegraph, The Hindu. He has also won several awards, including an award from the US Consulate and National Geography on women empowerment in Corona pandemic period. Congratulations, Deepak, you win 100,000 rupees, a citation as well as a trophy. Now, may I request Deepak to speak a few words about your motivation to do this story and the challenges which you have been facing around. Over to you, Deepak.
Hello.
Yeah, we can hear you, Deepak. We can hear you very well. Go ahead.
Thank you, IRC, for award. Hello.
Please go ahead. We can. हम सुन रहे हैं.
आपने मुझे जो अवार्ड सम्मानित किया है इसके लिए मैं आपका आभारी हूँ. इंडियन एक्सप्रेस की सपोर्ट की वजह से आज मैं इधर तक पहुंच चुका हूँ.
जी, हमारी तरफ से बहुत बहुत शुभकामनाएं आपको. जो भी यहाँ जूरी मेंबर्स बैठे हैं और जो हमारे कॉलीग्स हैं प्रेस इंस्टीट्यूट ऑफ इंडिया में और बाकी जगह में आपको मुबारकबाद दे रहे हैं. And congratulations once again. Next category, again, we have special mention prizes. Again, jury decided that the participants who could not make it to the top awards, but have done or captured some vivid and moving pictures. So finally, they decided to give credit or award to 7 of these journalists. And they are Miank Makhija, Parul Sharma, C. Biju, E.V. Ragesh, B. Murli Krishnan, Abhijit Ravi, and Salman Ali. So can I request Miank Makhija, a freelance journalist, for his picture? He's one of the many thousands anonymous health workers who has been out in the field collecting samples through sun, rain, and cold. It exactly speaks about the frontline workers, which he has mentioned about. To speak a few words. Miank, the mic is yours. I think he's not with us. If he joins us, we'll ask him to join later. So our next winner in the same special mention prize is Parul Sharma. Parul wins. She's a freelance news photographer. And the picture is about the pandemic hit Delhi, dialects of silence. And the picture was used for the Chandigarh Tribune. May I request Parul Sharma to speak a few words about the challenges which she had been facing around. So our next winner in the same category is C. Biju, chief news photographer of Mathrubhumi, for his picture Helping Hands. C. Biju, may I ask you to speak a few words, please? I think I saw him his slide, but I think he's not. Oh, he's here. Yeah, Biju, over to you, please. Can you? You are on mute. Can you unmute yourself and speak?
Hello. Hello.
Yes, C. Biju, please बोलिए. आप लगता है
ഈ അവാർഡ് തിരഞ്ഞെടുത്തതിന് വളരെ അഭിമാനമുണ്ട്, വളരെ സന്തോഷമുണ്ട്. നന്ദി. Thank you to all.
Yeah, thank you, C. Biju. Thank you very much. So, can we ask our next winner, E.V. Ragesh, senior news photographer, again from Mathrubhumi, for his picture on Safe Hands. Looks like he's also not getting connected with us, but looking forward to hear from him. The next winner in the same category is B. Murli Krishnan, chief photographer, again from Mathrubhumi, for the picture Service About Survival. Murli Krishnan, the congratulations once again for winning this award.
Thank you. Thank you.
And the mic is yours, and I hope there have been 3 winners in this category from Mathrubhumi, and you can speak on all the 3, behalf of all the 3, please.
Yeah, we are very happy because from my
institution, we have 3 winners, my colleagues. And I am very thankful to the Trust Institute of India and ICRC. And actually, I am second time I am receiving this award. In 2016, I got this award. And after 5 years, again, I am receiving this. I am very thankful and happy. And I am dedicating this award to the all health workers of Kerala and around the world. And thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you, Murli. You are a part of the Humanitarian Reporters family, and we all want to swell and increase as far as our number of the reporters who can work on this particular beat. Congratulations once again, and please convey our best regards and congratulations, a big congratulations to the editorial board as well as to other colleagues.
Sure. Thank you. Thank you,
The next winner in the same category is Abhijit Ravi, photojournalist from Kerala, Kamudi, for his picture, Boundless Dedication. May I request Abhijit Ravi to speak a few words, please? And last but not the least, in this same category of the special mentioned awards is Salman Ali, senior photojournalist from Hindustan Times Media, for his pictures, teachers as superheroes during the long pandemic outbreak. Salman Ali, congratulations. And if you are with us, can I request you to speak a few words, please? Anyway, thank you very much. Once again, congratulations on behalf of both the institutions. And thank you for your attentions. Now, ladies and gentlemen, I would like to give virtual floor to Mr. Shashi Nair to conclude today's program, the 15th annual award. But before that, I would like to ask our chief guest who has virtually been with us by giving all these awards, if he would like to speak for a minute or so. Mr. Jan Miskov, over to you.
Thank you very much, Surinder, and once more, congratulations to all the winners. I would just maybe say one thing, and it also comes from listening to the panelists and many important notes that they mentioned that I also put down for myself. I think that what I would like to say is that I would like to salute the courage of the journalists during a situation such as this COVID pandemic. This situation is an example of the calamity that touched every single one of us directly or indirectly. And obviously, this is also the case of the journalists. Many of us had family members or people that we know who were affected. Sometimes it was even ourselves. And obviously, it is a different challenge, I believe, although I'm not a journalist, but I believe it must be a different challenge when you are reporting on a story of which you are part. It must be very different to when you are reporting on the story of the others. So we were all part of the story to a certain extent, and the challenge is to again being able to take a step back and despite all that, remain professional, remain dedicated to the standards of the work that you are doing. And I would like, in addition, obviously, to making sure that you protect yourselves as much as you can during these challenging times, to be able to do and continue doing the work that you have been doing with so much dedication. So I would really like to salute the courage of every one of you, and thank you very much again for what you are doing. Thank you.
Thank you, Jan. Over to you, Mr. Shashi Nair, to conclude.
Yeah, thanks, Mr. Oberoi. I think you conducted that presentation ceremony well. It's always very difficult doing that at webinars, but we managed. Yeah, I was happy to see Jigyasa Mishra speak because last year I think she couldn't speak. We couldn't get her. At the same time, disappointed. Rakhi Ghosh's connection didn't work, and then there were others who were not there. But overall, I think it was a good program. And yes, of course, Jan has said the right thing. It's, these awards are, as I've said earlier also, I think in one of those earlier years, I used the phrase saluting the journalists, the courage of the journalists to, do this sort of extraordinary work, both journalists, photographers, people in the media, always unsung heroes, but thanks to them, we get to know about stories. So this afternoon is actually a celebration of the kind of work they do. And, I think they must all be very happy. And it's not just the award winners. It's also all those who've sent in entries to us, this year. And also all the others who might not have sent entries, but who are doing some marvelous work. So I think this is a salute to all of them. And we hope that these awards will, encourage the ones who've won awards, who've not won awards, or who have heard about them to, as I mentioned earlier, sustain the high quality and the high standards of good journalism and, try and raise the bar whenever possible. Do the jury members want to say anything before I conclude? Usha, DK, Mrinal, and Jaya, anything you'd like to say or ask anyone?
Shashi, congratulations on a wonderful function. It's such a motivation for journalists and a great experience for me as a jury member. Thank you so much.
Always a pleasure having you, Jaya.
I'm already looking forward to the next year's awards. Thank you. It's a wonderful experience.
No, we can have it in 10 Canal.
It's a wonderful experience.
Play host.
Right. Love
DK,
to.
Usha?
Yeah, great event, very well organized, very well done, right from the start, receiving the pictures and the communication from PII and all that has been excellent. And been a pleasure working on this for the second year.
Thanks, DK. Always value your advice. Usha? You're on mute. Just unmute. Usha, you're on mute.
Unmute yourself.
Yeah, it was very well done, and it was wonderful to see some of them at least on camera, and nice to meet them and to understand the kind of challenges they've been to. So a good bunch. I think we've chosen a good lot of people, and I'm very happy. Thank you.
It's been a few good bunches the last few years, so they're all doing well. Some of them are doing well, gone on to become editors. They're doing well, so yeah, I think it's a proud moment also, for us, because they're all doing well, and so I think the first thank you should go to all those journalists and photographers who've sent in entries, as I start by every year, because without their entries and the quality of the entries that they send, I think the PII-ICRC awards might not have reached the position that it has reached today. Of course, a big thank you to Jan Miscock for being here this afternoon and sharing his thoughts. He's made some very pertinent points, and I'm happy he's also taken down some notes.
Yes.
That's very important. I hope we can influence the policymakers in some way. We'll discuss about that later after the program. And I'm also happy that he values this association with the Press Institute, and I look forward to working, closely as always with the ICRC. A special thanks to the jury members, of course, Usha, Professor Mrinal, Mr. Krishnan, and of course Jaya. Some of them have been here before as jury members. I think for Professor Mrinal, it's the first time. So his second round will come sooner than later. But thank you all, as Krishnan mentioned at the end, for wading through all those entries and the stories, the pictures, and painstakingly spending time over it, and of course savoring it, like Jaya said, because the stories and the pictures, as has always been the case the past few years, get you immersed, and that's what good journalism is all about. So you don't feel it as a task, you do it happily, and it's like a book that you can't really put down, that sort of thing, but yet painstakingly going through it and then coming up with the results so very smoothly. It's almost like it was unanimous. And so thank you, very much to all of you. I can't, thank you individually enough, but of course we will celebrate when we meet, sometime. Thank you all very much.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, ICRC and PII.
Thank you very much. Thank you to all of you. Thank you, really.
Yeah, of course. I haven't ended. My big thanks to the ICRC team led by Mr. Surendra Oberoi. And I must mention this, and I mention this every time. Without Mr. Oberoi's support and without his drive and the energy he brings, it's all quite, energy. I mean, you can't see it, but it is there in him. Without his support, without that energy, and without his drive, and his sense of calmness, he's always very calm. So even if there's something he tries to calm things down. He brings people together. Without his support, I don't think the PII-ICRC Awards would have reached this position, the stature that it finds itself in. So a big thank you, Mr. Oberoi. It's been always, wonderful working with you, and I look forward to our association lasting as long as it can. All right, and to your team, you have a small team now, I know, but it's a strong team. Ashish, I don't know whether he's here. Ashish has been a big help. Of course, you've had, I think, the other person, I can't get his name, but to Rohan, of course, yes, Rohan, who's just joined recently, and of course, the other person who's helping with,
Shivam
Shivam, if we can have their faces here. Thank you, all of you, for making this possible, because always difficult with webinars, you have glitches, but I think we passed the test reasonably well. So thank you very much. And also thank you to my small team. There are two people here, of course, Reggie Simon, who's here, I think, who actually, put all the entries together for stories and pictures, and he was coordinating with the jury members, and he was there throughout. So thank you, Reggie, for doing this. I mean, actually not his job, but I got him to do it, and he did it wholeheartedly. And so was Guru Prasad, who did it last year and this year, tying up the technical ends with Ashish and all of you. So on that note, we'll end. But finally, it's a celebration for the journalists, and we should sort of leave with the thought that journalism, as far as we can see it now, at least still remains in fairly safe hands. Thank you all very much.